Do you want to see how I turn this into this? Join me and I'll walk you through my meal prep process to make delicious, satisfying meals that are nutrient dense and fit within my definition of health. To me, healthy meals aren't just about counting calories or weighing and calculating macros, which is often a controversial opinion in the fitness world. Healthy to me means making meals that nourish my body, mind, and soul while aligning with my financial goals to save money and my happiness goals to reduce the stress of cooking and cleaning every single day, multiple times a day. On my channel, I'll share the meal prep process I follow, which I've dubbed my meal prep perspective. I'll show you the good, the bad, and the beautiful while being authentically me. I'll get started on the meal I'm making for dinner by heating up my Dutch oven, adding some olive oil, and following that with some diced chicken breast. I'll saute my chicken until it's caramelized. I'll add a bit more olive oil, give it a stir, and let it cook for a few minutes. Once it's fully cooked, I'll remove it from the pan and add in some frozen veggies. I had diced celery and carrots in my freezer. You probably already know that I love frozen produce, either buying it frozen or freezing it myself to extend the life of fresh produce. Because I'm using a mix of frozen vegetables and fresh vegetables for this, I'll cook the frozen ones first to get out all the excess moisture. Once I'm satisfied with how cooked they are, which really just might be thawed, I'm gonna remove them from my pan and then I'll get started on sauteing my onions. I'm not sure if I've said what I'm making yet. I'm making chicken pot pie. I haven't made chicken pot pie in a very long time and I've certainly never made it for meal prep, so this was a new one for me and I definitely had some fun. And really the truth is I had some frozen pie crust that needed to be used. It was time. So I wanted to get creative and just change it up and do something I haven't done before. I had fun doing it and I learned a lot too. This would also be so good if you use rotisserie chicken or you just doubled up on veggies or added different veggies if you don't eat meat. So I'll stir these, I'll add some salt, I'll add in more olive oil, and then I'll add in my minced garlic and give that a stir. I'll cook these until they're fragrant, and really this is my favorite smell. So personal fact is that I had COVID in April of 2020 and I lost my sense of smell and taste for over a month. It was insane, and for a long time garlic and onions didn't taste the same to me. They didn't taste how I remembered them, which is just so weird. It's such an odd feeling and sensation, but happy to say that my sense of smell and taste is back. Yay. All right, anyway, back to cooking. What I was doing was I was adding in just little teaspoons of flour. I just added a little bit at a time, and I added some extra olive oil too to kind of give that the fat that I needed to thicken the sauce with the flour. You don't have to do this step, but I really wanted to just give this a little bit more body. So I did that. I made a little bit of a roux here. The other thing this helped to do too is deglaze my pan just a little bit. So you can see I'm trying to deglaze just a little bit before I add everything else back in, and I'm going to stir it all together and my filling is done. So I started with this meal because I knew it would take the longest, because not only do I have to cook all of this, I have to put it into the oven to bake the pie crust. So now I'm gonna get my containers out. Y'all know I love using the sheet pan trick, so I don't have to pick them up individually and take them out of the oven individually. This makes that so much easier. So I have mine on one and my husband's on another. I sprayed some olive oil in them, and now I'll get these portioned out. Now that all my filling's added, I'll wipe off my counter because I'm getting out my pie crust. Yay! I definitely wrestled with this a lot. I even broke a little piece off. I told you guys it needed to be used. It had been in my freezer for a minute, so it's thawed, but fresher would have always been better. But you know what? No food waste. It's still plenty, fine to eat. There's nothing wrong with it. Didn't go bad. That's why we're making chicken pot pie. I also decided to make things a little bit easier on myself. So once I got it, unrolled, there were 2 sheets of this like plastic wrap on it. So there's one on above it and one below it, so it's kind of sandwiched in the middle. So I decided to use my rolling pin with the plastic still on. I felt like that made it just a little bit easier and maybe a little bit less messy for this chef. Now that I've got it rolled out to a size that I'm satisfied with, I'm gonna grab one of my sharp knives in my kitchen, and I'm gonna use my knife to kind of measure out how big the containers are. I could have got a ruler, but it's not that serious. It's fine. So I'm turning the knife upside down and kind of scoring it, because remember that plastic's still on there. So I did that and kind of just imperfectly estimated how big to make each portion for the top. So after I score them, I'll turn my knife right side up and cut through them just gently because I'm on my counter. There's no cutting board underneath. So I'm just gently kind of pressing my knife in and separating them all. Took the plastic wrap off, and then I'll get them into each little container. I cut small little slits in these so the steam could escape, and you can kind of see here, because the mixture was warm, it started to kind of cook the pie crust, so that's fine. We're getting them into the oven, bada bing, on to the next. I'll repeat the same process for my husband's meals, and you can kind of see here as I go along, I kind of had to puzzle piece them together. It's alright. It ended up working out fine, and I actually had some leftover dough, but if you keep an eye out, you'll see what I made later. Look for the surprise. I'll get the little slits cut into these as well, and I'll get these into the oven. Now that those went into the oven, I'll continue on with the side I'm going to serve with this meal. I decided purposefully not to cook the cauliflower. That's what I'm making here. Beside the chicken pot pie, I just really had no idea how long it would take to cook the chicken pot pie. And I just figured it'll make it a little easier on me if I'm not trying to do both at the same time for a recipe that I've never done before. So I'm going to get my cauliflower. I bought whole cauliflower. I'll get it cut up here, and oh, I love cauliflower. It's really the best. Actually, as I started this, I remembered that I saw this tip on TikTok. If I can find the creator who shared it, I will credit them. It might be lost in the abyss, but thank you to the person who shared this amazing knowledge. So I saw that if you take a whole head of cauliflower and you just remove some of the thicker leaves on the back and you slam it onto the counter, it will break itself up. And honestly, guys, I was shocked. You can probably see my lips moving because I was just like, there's no way. There is no way. What the heck? How is this possible? Why have I been paying a premium for pre-cut cauliflower? What? This works. I'll repeat it again because I'm doing 2 heads of cauliflower here, but shook. I am shook. This definitely felt like one of those I was today years old when I learned type of things, because I had no idea you could do this. Did you guys know this? Was I the only one who didn't know this? I've never seen any other creators or chefs do it. Please, if you like cauliflower, try this. I feel like your life will never be the same. At least that's how I feel. I'll add my cauliflower pieces onto my sheet pan, and I'll do the same thing with the other one like I mentioned, so we'll get to see this trick again in action again. And I'll also cut up some of the larger pieces just so that everything cooks a little more evenly. And then also, as you all know, I always move the larger pieces of whatever I'm roasting to the outside of the sheet pan and keep the smaller pieces toward the middle so they don't burn. I'm not sure if the shock from this being so incredible will ever really wear off. Speechless is really how I feel. So, yep, I'm gonna keep going. Alright, so now that the magic is over, I'm gonna spray these with some olive oil and then I'll sprinkle with salt and pepper. Now it's time for that little surprise I mentioned earlier. I made this little apple hand pie with the leftover pie crust. I just took apples, sprinkled some brown sugar and some cinnamon and just threw them in the oven. So that was just a little snack for this chef while she cooked with that extra pie crust. So I'll cut the excess parchment paper off of the cauliflower in the sheet pan and I'll get these into the oven. Now I'll get started on lunch. My husband washed this Dutch oven while I cut up the cauliflower. Thanks, babe. So in here, I'm adding a shallot and some onion. And honestly, if I had more shallot, I probably just would have used that, but I only had one. So the rest of the onion worked just fine. So I'll get that in here. I'll let that cook for a minute and then I'll add in some salt and stir that around. Let those onions sweat out, get caramelized, all that good stuff. Next, I'll add in my minced garlic. I'll get that stirred up and again, cook until fragrant. Next, I'm gonna take some frozen peas. Bet you didn't see that coming. Frozen peas, I'm using 2 bags and I'll add them in. We'll stir them around and as we do, they'll kind of cook and thaw and you'll really get this beautiful bright green color, which is honestly one of the best things about using frozen veggies too. They keep their nutrients and color because remember, color equals nutrients. Next, I'll add in 2 cans of Great Northern beans or white beans that you like. I definitely struggled to get these out of the can, so forgive the camera shaking a little bit. I did not rinse these either, so I'll stir them up and let them cook for just a second. Next, we're gonna add the star of this soup. That's what we're making. We're making a pea soup. We're adding tahini. If you have tried tahini and other things before, it's one of the key ingredients in hummus. I can't really remember a time I've used it in a soup. Maybe I have before, but this was it really took this soup to the next level and also kind of thickened it a little bit too. So that was incredible. I also will add some kettle and fire vegetable broth and get that stirred up. Next, I'm going to add an entire bag of fresh spinach. You could definitely use frozen if you had it, and I guess you could probably not squeeze it out because you wouldn't hate having some more water in the soup unless you didn't want to water your soup down. Then in that case, squeeze out the excess if you're using frozen. Anyway, I added in the spinach bit by bit, stirring it up, and I ended up adding the whole bag. Alright, so next I'm actually going to scoop out some of my soup because I'm going to blend this up. That's the fun part. But I want to really make sure I can have some more dense and hearty, leaving some of the beans, the peas whole. So I'll scoop it out and remove it. And then I'll also add some fresh parsley. Next, I'll turn the heat off and then I'll begin blending. Again, this is the fun part. I don't know if y'all have immersion blenders, but I'm obsessed with them. It's new for me. I haven't even had it a year, I don't think. And I love this thing so much. I love that I don't have to try to transfer hot liquid into my blender, this has truly changed my life. So I'll blend that up until it's very well blended. And then I'm also going to add in some lemon juice as well. So this really brightens this and really just goes very well with all the ingredients, especially the tahini. And then I added back in my mixture I set aside of my soup, pre-blended soup, just so I had some other texture to the soup too. So I know not everybody loves a soup without a lot to chew. I know not everybody likes that, but I feel like this kind of does the best of both worlds in, because you have the smooth and creaminess, but you have something to kind of like bite into. So I like doing that too. I'll also take my cauliflower out of the oven and I'll just stir it up and move it around a little bit so that it can continue roasting. It's incredibly hot, as you can see. And I'll also drizzle a little bit more olive oil on here and pop it back into the oven. I'll get out the remainder of my containers and get them set up onto the counter. I always put the lids back in the cabinet that I keep them in, actually, so they don't get in the way. Now that I've got my container set up, I'll get my pot pies out of the oven. How stinking cute are these? They turned out incredible. I'll get them set on the counter so they can start cooling, and I always put them on a dishcloth just in the case that, we don't want to hurt my countertop. While those cool off on the counter, I'll bring my soup over and portion it out into all the containers. This was definitely a meal that I knew I wanted to serve a little bit differently than how I finished meal prepping it. So I added some Greek yogurt on top into my soup. That really added some more protein and just kind of made it that little bit extra creamy and yummy. And so I just wanted to add that fresh daily. And then I also toasted some really great sourdough bread and I served that with it too. And yes, that's a little happy dance because delicious. You'll have to let me know in the comments if you like the way I've been showing a little bit more of what I meal prepped and how I served it. And for the record, most of the time I serve the meals exactly how I meal prep them, but right now I have a really flexible schedule and I'm eating a lot of my meals at home, so I've got creative with how to just make it a little more special, I guess. So I'll continue. I'll get these portioned in the containers and then we'll be on to the next. Alright, so we're ending with breakfast, and I decided I wanted to make overnight oats, but I wanted to do it just a little bit differently than I've done it in the past. So this was fun for me. So I'm going to add my oats to my blender cup, and then I'll add them to the blender, and really this I guess was the part where I just wanted to make it a little different. So I wanted to kind of make them more like, in my head it was kind of like cocoa wheats. I don't know if anyone remembers that, or they still make that, or I don't know. I remember eating it growing up and just absolutely loving when my mom would make this for us for breakfast. And yeah, so this is kind of a throwback to that in some ways. Now that I was satisfied with how blended the oats were, I took a look and I decided this was not enough oats for me and my husband for breakfast. So I added some more, put them back onto the blender, and turned it back on. All right, and back over to the counter we go, open the lid, and I'm gonna add in some PB2. I just didn't have any peanut butter, but I also like PB2, but not in like a diet culture kind of way. This is like very cherished and like count your macros circles. I just like the way that it tastes and that it's really easy to keep on hand. So I added that in, I added some cocoa powder, and I'm blending that up, and yay, look at that. So exciting. I'm gonna get them portioned into my containers, and I also remembered, oh yeah, take the blade out of there, Lisa. Make your life a little bit easier. So do that cautiously, and then I'll get them portioned out. All right, now it's time to reassemble my blender and mix up my wet ingredients. So I couldn't remember if I had milk, so I checked. Nope, I don't. So water it is. That's perfectly fine, and also makes this cost just that little bit less. So do what you need to do, y'all. If I had milk, I probably would have used it, but alas. Anyway, so I filled my blender cup full of water. I'm adding in my cocoa powder and my PB2, and I'll put the lid on and let the blender do the hard work of incorporating these ingredients for me. And we're on to the next. This is all mixed up, and I'm adding this in. I'll give them a stir, and I really want to make sure that they're all swimming. I know I've mentioned that before, but I really not fun to grab overnight oats that are very dry. What I'll do is I'll always kind of fill them up as much as I think I should, and then I'll kind of go back and refill them just so I portion everything out correctly. So I'll give them a stir, and then they're pretty much set. And I almost forgot that I wanted to add some honey in here. They would have been, I guess, okay without it, but probably would have tasted lifeless, maybe it's a good word. So I added the honey in here. I definitely could have added it into my mixture when I blended up the water, cocoa powder, and PB2. And here's another little snippet of how I serve this. I made an express egg with some hot sauce, and I also topped the oatmeal with some Greek yogurt. Very last thing to come out of the oven, the roasted cauliflower. It just took a long time. Also, I probably had my oven a little bit lower for the chicken pot pie, so it's okay. So adding in my cauliflower, still blown away by my cauliflower trick. I hope you all enjoyed that. You're probably tired of me talking about it if you've made it this far now. Thanks for humoring me. I'll get those portioned out. Almost forgot that I set aside some parsley to top my soup with. Is this necessary? No. Does it make me very happy? Absolutely. I love a little topping. Just makes you feel like you're eating at a restaurant, you know? It's very thoughtful. And just like that, meal prep's all done. Time for a happy dance. There really is no feeling that can compare to knowing all of your meals are ready for a week. You cook them at home, you're saving money, you're cooking things you want to eat. It's the best feeling in the world, and I wish it for all of you. Thanks so much for tuning in to another week of my meal prep perspective, and I can't wait to see you here next week. Thank you so much for your support.